I want to welcome everyone to the Millcraft Creative uh, Meetup. Sorry, got a little stuck on my words. Where we're going to explore the art and practice of journaling, which is really near and dear to me and Gregor's hearts. And just a little housekeeping, you will remain muted until the end of the presentation, and then we will encourage you to share your own ideas and stories and practices of journaling. Feel free to make any comments in the chat room for a discussion later, and we'll have plenty of time to talk. So most of you know me. I'm Terri Price-Deep. I'm the creative consultant for Millcraft Paper. And then joining me today is my friend from the local Columbus creative community, Gregor Gilliom. He's a former journalist, a longtime marketing writer, and a content strategist. He's also a fellow field notes fanatic with too many to count.
Hello, it is so nice to be with you all today. I will jump at any chance I get to talk about writing. So thank you for joining us. And I'll just say as a sidebar, it has been so much fun working with Terri on this presentation. I didn't think it would be as fun, but we've had a good time working, collaborating, and chatting about it.
So, sorry about that. I want to thank our friends at Sappy, Nina, and Field Notes for providing some special takeaways that we're going to tease you with later in the presentation. So let's get started. So in an age of dominated by digital communication and technology, the practice of journaling on paper offers a refreshing and invaluable retreat.
It is a timeless art rooted in centuries of human tradition and continues to provide so many benefits. Today, we're going to share examples we hope will inspire you to take up journaling or to keep going if you've already started.
Before we dive into the history of journaling, we must address the age-old question of the journal versus the diary. To many, a diary is kept by an angsty teenager, but a journal is something more. I was half right.
So we looked it up, and according to Merriam-Webster, to journal is to record daily thoughts or experiences. Although many use the word journal and diary interchangeably, some claim that diaries are used to record the events of the day, while a journal is used to explore ideas as they unfold. So journals often contain more than just a recap of the day. Honestly, we don't really care about the difference between the two. Semantics aside, however you define journaling, we think it's getting thoughts and experiences and ideas down on paper is invaluable and has to be kept alive.
So, from a historical perspective, there's no known origin of the journal, but we do know people have been recording their everyday lives for as long as were able to carve, paint, or scribe.
But in more modern times, there have been many famous sources of inspiration, from Da Vinci to Lewis Carroll to, sadly, Anne Frank to Frida Kahlo. We love that in many of these examples, words are embellished with drawings and drawings embellished with words. You'll see lots of examples of that later. These are all famous examples, but there are other closer to home that we love. Thanks to people who journaled, we have a better understanding of everyday life for locals in the past. While creating this presentation, we asked our friends at the Ohio History Connection if they could provide some examples of journals from our state's past, and they turned up some really cool examples for us.
For example, Benjamin Lundy, a prominent abolitionist, used to journal to capture in detail his travels through Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana in the dead of winter 1821. During his travels, he gave talks about the anti-slavery movement and the condition of enslaved people across the Americas.
Later in 1883, Frances Casement wrote down her thoughts as she worked hard to support the women's suffrage movement in Ohio.
And in 1914, Ohioan Bert Moffat journaled his experience overseas in World War I. What a great gift these journals were for historians and families alike.
And of course, let's not forget the role of journals in pop culture and movies and TV. From Carmi's dish ideas in The Bear to the Grail Journal and Indiana Jones to the Mean Girls Burn book to what's probably most famous all, Bridget Jones's Diary.
So the timeless art of journaling continues to provide numerous benefits that are often unmatched by their digital counterparts. It takes almost countless forms, including sketchbooking, note-taking, wine list, fitness logs, keepsakes, scrapbooking, and more.
Writing on paper offers a much needed digital detox, a break from screens that reduces the eye strain and distraction of internet notifications. The simplicity of pen or pencil on paper creates a focused environment conducive to reflection and uninterrupted writing. Many find journaling therapeutic. The act of writing by hand engages the brain in unique ways, fostering mindfulness and deep connections with thoughts and feelings. That tactile process reduces stress and promotes mental clarity. The physical act of writing can slow down the mind, allowing for more deliberate and reflective thinking, which is often lost in the rapid pace of typing.
So handwriting, believe it or not, has shown to enhance creativity and memory retention. The slower pace of writing by hand allows for more thoughtful expression and can spark creative ideas that might not emerge while typing. Studies have indicated that the act of writing helps in encoding information more effectively, making it easier to recall details later, and then this makes a great practice for students, professionals, and anyone who's looking to enhance their cognitive skills.
Finally, and this may be our favorite, a journal on paper becomes a tangible artifact of one's life, a record of your personal legacy. Unlike digital files, it can be easily deleted or lost in the ether. A handwritten journal carries a personal touch that can be cherished and preserved. It becomes a personal legacy, a historical document of one's thoughts, experiences, and growth. Future generations can find value and insight from these handwritten pages. They offer a glimpse into the mind and life and time of the writer. This kind of thing is personal to both of us. We thought we'd share a few examples of our own, and I'll go first. So my father is 93 years old, and we recently had to move him into assisted living. And if you've ever done that, you know it involves a lot of downsizing and going through books and stuff. And while we were going through his things before the move, I found this book, something I'd never seen before. It's a travel journal he and my mom kept during a trip they took to Spain and Portugal in 1967. In it, they described their experiences in amazing detail. They talked about their flights, the food, the people they met, and how they felt in these vivid new places. And best of all, they both helped write it, each writing every other day. I loved reading it and hearing their youthful voices. This book is a great example of journaling for the next generation. It was a chapter in their lives I knew nothing about until I read it. And just for fun, I had to share this. On one of the first pages of their journal, my dad listed the numbers for the traveler's checks they used for a grand total of $60 for the entire trip.
Wow.
Right?
Okay, well, you see this beautiful lady? Well, that's my grandmother. She wrote in a journal every day of her life. When she died, we found boxes and boxes full of filled books. We are fascinated to read them and yet a little bit afraid. But true to her humor, she mostly complained about everyday things, like she hadn't heard from her sister this week, or my father hadn't come over to mow the grass. Her legacy as a journal writer is very dear to our hearts.
I love that. So just a decade after my parents wrote their travel journal, I was writing one of my own. In sixth grade, my parents sent me to France on a winter exchange program. Part of our learning there was keeping an illustrated journal of the experience, and here it is. I found this just recently before a move my wife and I made, and it brought back so many memories. I'm so glad the teachers encouraged us to write every day. And it wasn't just taking down the day's events, they were themed, like what it was like going up the mountain, what it was like in the classroom, what it was like touring a cheese farm. It was all these interesting mini essays that they had us write. And it brought so much back. I sometimes wonder how many memories I've forgotten because I didn't write them down like I did back then.
That's awesome. And look at your artwork.
I know, right?
You go, Gregor. And then, of course, modern technology makes journaling, especially for older folks, much easier. Thanks for trending companies like Storykeeper and Storyworth. People are capturing the history of their loved ones, helping build a personal legacy for future generations. These companies provide writing prompts and then later turn the stories into a printed book. We're curious in the comments if anybody's tried this and what you think of it, because I'd love to do this myself. Now, for some fun, more recent examples of journaling. One of the great things about working in the Columbus market, and actually all the markets that I cover, is meeting and collaborating with some truly amazing creatives. Many of them journal for both professional and personal satisfaction. We asked a few of them to describe why they do it and to provide samples of how they use journals to capture ideas and tell stories.
So the first is my friend Dylan Mangus, a local design legend here in Columbus. Dylan spent years doing corporate design, but recently followed his faith to serve as the creative director for the Bible Project. I'm going to share with you how Dylan describes his experience with journaling. In half a century of creating art, I discovered that nothing is more satisfying than making marks on a real surface. Nothing in the digital world compares to the ancient, tangible reality of old school art. I've tried dozens of art and journaling apps. They sparkle and then fade, but there is a quiet, beautiful power, a magic perhaps, in the physical presence of ink on paper. It's raw and honest. It's the head, heart, and hand moving in real time onto real surfaces that can be seen beyond battery-powered screens and pulled plugs. That's why I returned to journaling. I've flipped through Dylan's journals and they are truly amazing. And I will also say that it makes me very mad when designer is a really good writer at the same time, because I do not have their skills. It kills me that they have mine.
I don't know, we just saw your journal. So next is Joel Showalter. By day, he's a master copywriter for one of the Columbus's largest agencies. By night, he's a published poet. And then I'm going to read to you what he told us. My writing process for poems almost always starts on paper. I really like that, by the way. Typing is too fast. I need a medium that slows me down. I prefer bound notebooks. The best options are thin enough to lie flat so I can fill the page front and back of every page without having to navigate spiral binding or holding the damn thing open. The paper absolutely must be ruled, whether I'm trying to get first ideas down or playing with individual words and phrases. I need the structure of lines of the page. It feels like some kind of visual reassurance. A blank, unlined page is way too scary. The openness feels like chaos. And he went on to say, I write in pencil, not because I can erase it, but because I like the friction. It slows me down just enough. I've become a moleskin aficionado over the years, never the little pocket-sized journals. I need something that'll give me a sense of how a poem might look on the finished page. I've been given some larger moleskins with pretty covers as gifts, but what they say about the curse of a beautiful notebook is true. I prefer something plain that doesn't feel special, so I'm not worried about messing it up. My covers get a little stained, a little roughed up, which is how it should be. And I don't know about you all, but I have some beautiful journals I've gotten as gifts, and I just cannot ink them. I want to keep them forever.
Today, you break that habit. Tony Baker is another great example. As a medical illustrator for the OSU Wexner Medical Center, Tony often works on computers, but he loves using paper for personal reflection. Tony told us, I was given this sketchbook as a gift for Christmas 2016. I love the leather-bound quality and the feel of the blank pages. The paper took pencil well, so I used a mechanical pencil with 2B lead. I decided to fill it with sketches of family and friends and strangers. Since I'm a medical illustrator, there is also the occasional skull, hand, or foot. The sketchbook traveled with me to Paris, cabin trips, Saturday mornings at Fox in the Snow with my husband, anywhere I thought I would be able to sit and draw. It became a record of people, places, and things, and collected images over a 4-year period. It's an artifact of focused moments spent observing, feeling the pencil or pen move across the paper. It's a record of my happy place.
So next up is Keith Tatum, a renowned local information architect. Like Tony, he does a lot of work on his laptop, but his mind truly opens up in his countless journals. Here's what Keith had to say. Capturing my thoughts begins with connecting fragments of ideas. I find that sketching or mind mapping helps me see relationships between concepts that might otherwise remain abstract. It's about laying down a blueprint, whether in words or visuals, that I can revisit, refine, and elaborate on. This process of turning intangible ideas into something visual allows me to organize and clarify my thinking. I often use rapid iterative drawing as a way of thinking out loud, letting my pen lead the way as I explore new directions. The more I experience, the clearer my thoughts become. Playful experimentation helps me find new paths, often revealing inspiration where I least expect it. I view it as an ongoing act of curation. By preserving ideas, sketches, and visual references, I create a living archive that allows me to relive moments and see the evolution of my thinking and drawing. I think these sketches are awesome.
Yeah. And he has pages and pages and pages of them. It's really, really cool.
Sorry. So these guys aren't alone. After a decline in the late 90s, the popularity of notebooks has increased dramatically in the last few years. Paper-based notebooks and journals are expected to rise at a considerable rate between now and 2030. I've actually heard that people were journaling a lot during COVID. There was a lot of introspection going on.
Hopefully it continued. So now let's talk about getting started with journaling of your own, or as William Wordsworth once described the essence of this intimate and reflective practice, fill your paper with the breathings of your heart. Does that sound intimidating? It doesn't have to be. Starting a journal is simple. All it requires is a notebook and something to write with. There are no rules or specific formats to follow. Journaling can be as structured or as free form as you want. Some prefer to write daily entries, while others might journal only when the mood strikes. The key is consistency and finding a rhythm that works best for you.
So Lisa Lopez Snyder is a journalist, essayist, and short story writer. She was a winner of the 2011 Lamar York Prize for Nonfiction. She lives here in Columbus, Ohio, and she's a friend of mine. Lisa shares ideas to get us started. She says, she calls it free writing. You write from your heart, not your head. You push your inner editor out the door, you write freely, and you worry about grammar and editing later. Just like James Ferber once wrote, don't get it right, just get it written. A good way to start is with a prompt. So prompt number 1 is, where am I from? What you do is you write for 8 minutes, you reread, then you circle new ideas from the words you wrote for further exploration later.
We're not asking you to do it now, but something to do as soon as you get off this call. I really like the second prompt because it's something anyone can explore, and that is simply, I remember. To get started, you can look at a photo or make a list of things from the past that you remember vividly or that had a lasting impact on you. For example, I remember my childhood bedroom, my first car, my first date, my first memory, my first day of second grade or college. So now for inspiration, we thought it'd be good to show you this prompt in action.
Yes, that's me. And I remember my first Christmas dance. It was my first Christmas dance. He was a senior quarterback. I was a freshman in the art club. He hated dancing. There was a hypnosis as entertainment. His teammates volunteered him. Under hypnosis, he confessed his fear of messing up the dancing and worrying I'd be upset. I spilled punch on my white dress. perfectly matching his burgundy tuxedo. We laughed. That summer we broke up. He left for boot camp and I moved on to sophomore year. It wasn't perfect, but it was unforgettable.
Terri, I said I wasn't going to cry.
Oh, hush. I'm crying over that haircut, actually.
So the more you write, the more self-discovery you may experience. Here are a few of our favorite prompts. Think about a recent challenge that tested you. What inner resources did you discover you have? What new strengths emerged from that experience? Or try describing a skill or quality you admire in someone else. How could you begin to cultivate this trait in yourself? What small step could you take today? Think about somebody who profoundly impacted your life. Write about the specific moments or interactions that shaped you. What lessons did they teach you, intentionally or unintentionally? Write about a relationship that challenges you. What triggers from your past might be influencing your reactions today? What would this relationship look like if you could heal those old wounds? Then, after you've written for a while, revisit your recent journal entries. What patterns do you see? What themes keep emerging? And write about those patterns and what they might be telling you.
Prompts can also simply just be fun. Try writing, if I were president, I would. That would probably be a really hot topic right now. If I could talk to someone from the past, what would I say? The silliest thing I ever did was. If I could reverse time, the first thing I do is. The best day of my life was. Whatever prompt you choose to just get started. That's all that matters, getting started. So finally, I get to talk about my favorite part, the paper. So here are some thoughts on paper. The choice of paper type allows users to customize their journaling experience. Blank pages encourage creativity, offer endless possibilities for drawing, doodling, or mind mapping. Line pages provide structure, perfect for documenting daily thoughts, writing lists, or organizing ideas. Graph pages with their grid-like structure are excellent for creating bullet journal layouts, designing graphs, or keeping neatly aligned notes. Whatever the purpose, a paper journal is a timeless companion for expression, productivity, and planning.
Okay, at this point, we've talked a lot. Before we break for the day, we'd like to hear from you. So please feel free to unmute, or maybe we'll do that on our side, and share some experiences. And I'll just get you started with a prompt to simply say, do you have any good journaling stories to share? Do you keep a journal or a diary? And how often do you write?
So and we do have some notes. If anybody wants to unmute now, or I can just go ahead. Lydia added reading AI meeting notes to the meeting. I don't know what she's saying there. I don't know what that is about.
Ignore that one. It's an AI tool that is added to the meetings to create notes for you.
Okay. So Keith said, "What a gem for your parents' experience, priceless keepsakes. I love the chairlift illustration."
Hey,
There
Keith, no judging, buddy. Keith, do you have anything to add to your journaling, your practice? Because I mean, they really are beautiful works of art, and not just graphical, but filled with words too.
Yeah, well, definitely I appreciate being able to share a part of my journey and giving people a chance to see that. One of the things that I just started doing that I haven't done in the past, and of course, this is not a product placement, but field notes, I started capturing details and things that come up during trail hikes that I take. So this one's all about hiking for me. And it runs the gamut from the conditions when I'm out, because I've been hiking in the winter on days like this in Central Ohio, to the number of steps that I've taken, and, you know, if I'm carrying weight in my backpack, but also the things that I'm carrying with me in my mind. And also it's helped to take note of like while I'm hiking, if my backpack is too heavy and it's causing stress on my shoulder, I'm aware of those physical things too. So it's been kind of like a mind body experience thing that I just started doing, and I'm having a lot of fun keeping track of all this stuff.
Are you taking the notes real time, or is this something you do when you're finished and back in the office or even the car?
All the above. So sometimes I'll grab it from my pocket while I'm on the trail. Of course, it's a little bit harder. I've got a little tiny clipboard that fits in the
Nice.
backpack too. But I find myself, once I've come back from like a half day hike or something, I'll catch up, take a nap. And then when I wake up from that, sort of in that lucid state after a nap,
Nice.
it's easy to recall a lot of the things that, I was thinking about while I was out on the trail. And that's often where I'll capture some of it in the actual notebook.
I know a lot of your work starts with a mind map. It's words, but it's
Mhm.
also connections between words. When
Yep.
you're doing exactly the journaling you're talking about now, is that still starting with a mind map, or is it in sentence and paragraph form?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, if I don't know if this will translate, but these are notes from
Yep.
a hike that I did with a friend at High Banks, and it started out as a mind map, but then I found myself sort of distilling things and drawing little illustrations of where I felt shoulder pain and things like that. So it's a little bit of mind mapping, a little bit of just complete, brain dump, writing things down, short sentences, and maybe sometimes doing a really simple illustration or drawing, not unlike your chairlift illustration.
Not bad for a non-designer sixth grader.
I love
Come
it.
on.
Those are my favorite kind of drawings in the world.
Purely
That's awesome.
two-dimensional. Do you go back and read your journals very often?
Yeah, so I'm a weirdo. I have a Google photo library that I take of some of the more meaningful things that I've captured in sketchbooks or notebooks and so forth. And for me, it's a time machine. I can go back and, well, not just a time machine, I can go back and revisit thoughts or ideas or emotions, but I can also what I like to do is look at how I'm progressing, how my handwriting's improved, how my drawing style has improved, how my words and how I think clearly has improved. So, for me, it's probably everything. It's how I grow, how I learn, how I capture things.
It's interesting how like an Apple Photos library now can be searched by words. And I'm wondering, is Google smart enough to read your handwriting so that you could theoretically search the images for keywords?
It is. It does remarkably well with like OCR, so it'll understand
Yeah.
very fine print on a sketchbook or a piece of paper. So yeah, that's something I don't really take advantage of it, but I'm aware that it's capable of doing that.
Yeah, that's cool. I think Tom Broadbent mentioned in the notes you have a good one. Do you have a story for us, or have you been journaling, something you want to share?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So this has been great. Thank you for this. It's just probably my most profound experience with journaling goes back to just graduating high school in 1984. And I was ready to kind of spread my wings. And so I decided to take a solo bike trip from Cleveland, Ohio, down to St. Petersburg, Florida, and spent about 24 days on the open road. I actually carry a little picture, I'll share this with everybody, of me back when I had hair. But I started the process of journaling, and like you, Keith, I added some illustrations to it, and I was able to capture all those ups and downs and the second guessing the decision of doing it and some of the challenges and uncomfortable situations I got into, and where I decided to camp and the people that I came across. And it's been such a great resource for me, so much later in life, to be able to go back and revisit those as the memories start to fade, and I can kind of share with my kids. But it's just it's one of my probably most treasured journals that I had done. And I'd kind of fallen away from it for a long time. So it's definitely a great reminder of how important it is to capture those memories, not just for yourself, but, for your kids and for other,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I spent a year abroad in college, and while I didn't formally journal, I wrote a long airmail letter to my parents every week for about close to 50 weeks. And that in itself became this amazing journal and record of that experience. And I think that's why journaling is that much more important right now, because the art of letter writing is going away. And I'd love to see that come back for this same reason. But since we don't do it so much, hopefully journaling is the next best thing. If my boys are grown at this point, I wish I had had them do more of it while they were growing up. They did a little on trips and stuff, but my parents really leaned on me to do it when I was that age, and I have that record, and we don't have it so much from them. So it's just a reminder that it is timeless.
That's awesome. I wanted to point out something that Julie Halls wrote. She said, my mom did a story worth book. She wouldn't let me proof it or help or add pictures to it. The designer and me had a fit. But the stories she shared, even full of typos, are priceless. That's awesome.
That's great. And I will share this. So I mentioned my 93-year-old dad, we moved into assisted living. I got him started on a story worth about probably 18 months ago when he was still using a computer. And due to his decline, he can no longer use that computer. And so that was sort of an unfinished project that makes me really sad that I didn't get him started on it earlier, because it is dependent on them typing. And they could always write it out and you could transcribe it if you wanted to. But the idea that they're posting these prompts that maybe you would never have thought of asking them always unlocks interesting stories. And so I think the story I would share now, the message is, get them started sooner than later. I waited just a little too long for him to do that. And we have lots of records. He was a writer and a professor, so we're not lacking that. But I know there are some secret stories that would have been unlocked by that if we'd started even just a year earlier. So if they have a competency in email, that's all they have to do is reply to it. And unfortunately, he's lost that recently. So I'd say try it. It's not very expensive, and it can be a really cool outcome.
This is a little bit Zen, but recently, and I saw this on TikTok and I thought it was a great idea. You're supposed to set your intentions every morning by writing down 10 things that you're thankful for. And then you send love to 3 people who are bothering you. And then you say 3 things that you want to accomplish. Yeah. And so far, I've been doing it for about a week.
That's cool. How does it feel?
It feels great. Yeah. I feel like sometimes I'm thankful for the same 10 things, and sometimes I'm creative and come up with new things. And those people that I want to send love to changes often, and sometimes I can't think of those people either. So that's kind of a good thing, right? Like I don't have 3 people who bother me every day. Yeah.
Sometimes when it comes to forming a habit like this, it helps to use that. It's not I have to do this, it's I get to do this. It's that basic change that turns something from a chore or a negative to a positive or a good habit. And I could see that working here. Like, you know what? I don't have to do this thing. I get to record my experiences, or I get to put these thoughts down. And I don't know. I think that could make a difference.
Lisa, do you want to say something?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I wasn't sure if the microphone would work or not. One of the types of journaling that I like to do that didn't get covered here, surprisingly, is dream journaling. And I actually keep a notebook next to me in the bed with a pen. And so when I wake up in the morning, I have really weird, vivid dreams. So sometimes there's little sketches of, oh, this is what, this looked like, and all these kinds of things. And it's really interesting to go back and read them later on. And it's amazing how I can almost relive the whole dream again just by reading what I wrote about them. And so that's something I really, really like to do. Another journal thing that I do is every time I take a trip out of state, whether it be spring break as a kid or honeymoons or, whatever, I always take a journal with me and I write everything down that I do from, being on the airplane to, going out at night with my girls or whatever it is. And those are so wonderful to reread because there's so much that you forget. So it's nice to be able to go back. And one last thing, I also am a genealogist. And so that's almost another form of journaling because I've
Oh,
interviewed
yeah.
family members or clients and things, and you ask them the questions and you get the stories, and then you go and do the research behind it. And so you get their story, but you also get to give them story because you find all these wonderful things that they may have not have known about themselves that they can go and take back to their family members. And so that's something that I've always enjoyed too.
Oh, I love that. I've never kept a dream journal, but I do know that I always have a pen and paper next to my bedstand because I do sometimes have trouble getting to sleep and I think of ideas. Oh, I should do this. Like actually the idea to come up with this journaling and reach out to Gregor was one of those middle of the night. Oh, we should do a journal. Should do a journaling webinar. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Lisa, that is amazing. You mentioned the dream journal, and I'm kind of sad that I didn't think of it too, because I keep one and I have for about 5 years. And for some reason, my dreams in the last couple of years have been really vivid and really crazy. And if I don't write them down immediately, they're gone. I don't retain them. I bet I retain one out of every 20. So, like you said, I'll go back and reread them a week or two later, and I cannot believe the stuff that was captured. Sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's hilarious, sometimes it absolutely is ripped from the headlines of my life, sometimes it's completely random, and I don't know what it means. But when we talk about going back and reading our journal entries and looking for recurring patterns and themes and ideas, that's one thing I've been doing and trying to figure out what is the thing that ties this all together. And what's it telling me? But that you're right. It's a great practice. Not everybody has vivid dreams, and I didn't for a long time, but for some reason I do now. And I'm glad I got into the habit of doing it because it really is fun to go back and read.
Awesome. Well, does anybody have anything else to share? These are all great ideas. Great.
I do have a question.
Sure.
For those of you who have been successful at continuing journaling, as opposed to those of us who have probably started a bajillion journals and gotten to day 3 or 4 and then didn't do day 4 or 5 after that, how do you, what's the trick? How do you continue being persistent or not realizing 8 months later, oh, I should be journaling in that journal that I started 8 months ago?
I do think it's a non-judge zone, right? Like, so what if you get started and you put it down and you go back to it? I mean, I think that's how life is, right? I don't know if I have any tips for staying motivated in it. What about you, Keith? You have any?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is I give myself full permission to do it whenever I feel like it. It's not a daily habit necessarily, although I'm capturing things daily. I think maybe experimenting with how you're going about it. Like if it feels like it's a daily chore, then you're doing something wrong, right? Like whereas maybe you can think about throughout the week times that you are more naturally reflective or where you might have a moment to yourself. I know we all have a lot of things going on in our lives, and maybe you're the type of person that gets to think straight for a minute over coffee. So if you can pair that with your coffee occasionally, maybe that's the trick. It's sort of the signal to your brain like, hey, this is a moment for me to be reflective and to capture something that's meaningful rather than waking up every morning trying to figure out how to make it a daily chore.
Yeah, I love the idea of going someplace else and doing it. I mean, you might be lit up by the sights and smells of a coffee shop or a park or something, and you're inspired by just the surrounding. Just if you force yourself to take that book and keep it present and just sit there, you'll start to feel it. The other thing, I love the non-judgmental idea, Terry. It doesn't have to be pages and pages. It could just be a few sentences about how you feel in that moment or something that's on your mind. As a writer, if I'm ever looking at a blank page and I'm not really sure how to start, I just start bulleting ideas. It's kind of like the mind mapping that Keith does. They're incomplete ideas, but they're just ideas that are written down, and just that little bit gives you momentum to elaborate on those ideas. So it's okay if they're incomplete ideas or incomplete sentences, as long as that habit is being formed.
And and to that, it's okay that they're incomplete journals or sketchbooks.
Yep.
I've got half a dozen sitting next to me as I turn sideways, but there's nothing to prevent me from filling in the blank pages over time. I'm not in any hurry to complete one. I can complete many, and I use them for different things. Some are for just ideas, some are just for drawing, some are just for screwing around.
I'm shocked when Terry, the one thing that I do absolutely consistently is I take pretty furious notes at CSCA meetings where creatives from outside of our market come in and tell us stories who inspire us. And I do go back and look at those entries, and I'm shocked at what I wrote down but didn't retain. And then when I read it and read it again, suddenly it is locked in there. So there is this wonderful thing of retention of information too. It's kind of like journaling. It's not going verbatim. It's really picking and choosing the ideas that strike you as most important, most meaningful to you, and then elaborating a little bit on that and why. And that is probably my most consistent tradition as far as this goes. And I love going back and seeing those things. And I think if you do it, like I said, in the travel journals, you absolutely will have a record of things that you did not remember from that you're so glad that you did.
That's an interesting point, because I learned by note taking, right? Like, I definitely write notes through every meeting I attend and I did that when I was studying. Rewrote notes sometimes too, just because it helped me reread it. It forced me to reread it. So I guess if you're a natural note taker, then journaling probably comes a little bit easier for you.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have anything to add? This has been so fun. All right. Well, if nobody else has anything, then I really appreciate everybody tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.